are you in trouble? What,
not,
you're making me some bad guy.
I'm not in trouble
you
with her.
can
I'm
be. Just speak your mind. I'm telling.
Bad, Susie. You've got him by the balls, and you knew it.
The world of Christian television is rocked as Joni Lamb, co-founder of Daystar Television Network, is suddenly at the center of a scandal that no one could have predicted. Known for her role in building the network alongside her late husband Marcus Lamb, Joni has long been seen as a symbol of faith, grace, and unwavering dedication. But now, shocking new revelations have come to light, revealing a side of Joni that has left the Christian community stunned. What is the truth behind these allegations, and how did they change everything for Joni? Join us as we uncover the details of this unexpected controversy and the fallout that has shaken Daystar to its core. Rumors and theories about Joni Lamb, from Jimmy Evans. The rumors surrounding Joni Lamb's role in the family and Daystar Television Network had been circulating for a while, but the involvement of Jimmy Evans added fuel to the fire in a way that no one saw coming. Evans, a well-known Christian marriage counselor and the founder of XO Marriage, had long been considered a trusted voice in the evangelical community. However, his relationship with Joni and the Lamb family became a point of contention after a controversial meeting in July 2023. According to sources close to the family, this meeting was far more than a simple family discussion. It was a power struggle that would leave lasting consequences for everyone involved. As the rumors began to swirl, many started to wonder, what exactly was happening behind closed doors? Theories started to develop about the true nature of Joni Lamb's influence and how far she would go to maintain control over her family and Daystar. Some insiders claimed that Joni had been manipulating her children, especially Jonathan Lamb, to ensure that her voice remained the ultimate authority in the family. Others suggested that Jimmy Evans was using his influence as a marriage expert to help her solidify her power, perhaps even going so far as to control decisions at Daystar. One popular theory was that Evans had been working with Joni to consolidate her leadership within the ministry, especially after Marcus Lamb's death. There was talk that Joni, in her grief, had become more reliant on Evans, not just as a marriage counselor, but as a kind of spiritual advisor, who helped her maintain control over Daystar's direction. Some sources even suggested that Evans, who had a reputation for offering guidance to other Christian leaders, might have seen an opportunity to align himself with Joni for personal gain. Was he simply offering counsel, or was he trying to influence her decisions and, by extension, the future of Daystar? The theory that Evans might be helping Joni manipulate the family dynamic was made all the more plausible by the way the meeting unfolded. Jonathan Lamb and his wife Susie were allegedly subjected to intense pressure during this encounter, with Evans telling Jonathan that he needed to submit to his mother's authority because, as Evans put it, Joni's voice was as valid as God's. The suggestion that Joni could speak for God and that her decisions were divinely ordained raised alarm bells for those who knew the family. Could Joni, with the help of Evans, have been setting herself up as the undisputed spiritual leader of Daystar? Some believed that Evans, knowing Joni's vulnerability after Marcus's death, was taking advantage of the situation to increase his influence over the Lamb family's affairs. Others suggested that Joni's increasing control was a way to protect the legacy of Daystar after Marcus's passing. With Marcus no longer there to balance the power dynamics within the family, some insiders thought that Joni had become more determined to hold on to her authority. Whether out of fear, ambition, or a need to safeguard the future of Daystar, Joni appeared to be fighting for her place at the top. Theories began to spread that she was trying to suppress any dissent within the family, particularly Jonathan, who had long been seen as a potential successor to the leadership of Daystar. Joni's efforts to push Jonathan into submission were seen by some as an attempt to solidify her own position and prevent any challenges to her authority. At the center of these theories was the belief that Joni, with the assistance of Jimmy Evans, had become a controlling figure within the family and the ministry. But why? Was this about maintaining control for personal reasons, or was it about protecting Daystar's future and the legacy of the Lamb family? The more people speculated, the more complicated the situation seemed. As the whispers grew louder, the idea that Joni's influence was becoming increasingly dangerous took root. People began to question whether she was truly acting in the best interest of her family, or whether she was manipulating those around her to maintain her position of power. The rumors about Joni's power struggle were not just about her control over the family. They also raised questions about how much influence she had over the ministry's direction. Was Daystar becoming less about the mission of spreading faith and more about maintaining the Lamb family's dominance in Christian television? This web of speculation, fueled by the involvement of Jimmy Evans, continued to grow. What exactly was Joni's relationship with Evans, and how much power did he really have within the family dynamic? Was he simply offering guidance, or was he complicit in a larger scheme to control Daystar's future? Theories about his role in the family's internal struggles were as varied as they were intense. Some believed that Evans was acting as a puppet master, while others saw him as a well-meaning but misguided advisor. Either way, the intersection of Joni's authority and Evans' influence seemed to be at the heart of the growing tension within the family. The most pressing question for many was what was really happening behind the scenes. Could the once strong Lamb family, united by faith and love, be falling apart due to the power struggles and manipulations of its leaders? The rumors surrounding Joni Lamb, Jimmy Evans, and the future of Daystar left many fans and followers wondering what the truth really was, and whether the Lamb family would ever be able to heal from the damage caused by the scandals and speculations that were now swirling around them.
Why are you in trouble? What's
I'm
that?
not-
Yo, make me some bad guys.
I'm not in
That
trouble
you
with her.
can't
I'm
be.
just.
Just speak your mind. I'm telling
you.
you.
Bad, Susie. You've got him by the balls, and you know it. And
Wow,
that's
babe.
exactly what
Babe, they're
you do.
really scary.
The submission means she's the voice of God to you. And I said,
I'm sorry. Can you clarify? She said she's the voice of God to me.
she's the voice of God.
So
to you.
God's voice is-
So I have to hear. I can't hear from God. I have to hear from her.
Outside of Daystar. What she says is God in Daystar. This is the voice of God in Daystar.
But what accountability does she have if she's off?
And you're saying you want to pray about it. There's been a lot of prayer. There's been a lot of conversations. It's time to make a decision.
Well, we just had this meeting today, so I think it's fair to be able to give
No,
me time
I think
to
you need to
process
tell me
things.
now. You either submit or you don't. You either submit or you don't. I'm not playing the game any longer. I'm not letting.
What exactly did Jimmy Evans say, the shocking allegations? The meeting in July 2023 between Jonathan Lamb, his wife Susie, Joni Lamb, and Jimmy Evans became one of the most talked about events in the Lamb family history. For those on the outside, it seemed like just another family discussion, albeit a tense one. But what happened during that meeting shocked everyone involved. It was during this meeting that Jimmy Evans, a respected marriage counselor and the founder of XO Marriage, made some of the most shocking and manipulative statements that would forever alter the dynamics within the Lamb family. What exactly did Jimmy Evans say during that meeting? And why did his words cause such an uproar? The meeting had started innocuously enough, or so it seemed. Jonathan and Susie Lamb had their concerns about the direction Daystar was taking after Marcus Lamb's sudden passing, and they wanted to speak with Joni to address these issues. What they did not expect was that instead of an open discussion, they would be confronted with an attempt to pressure them into submission, both to Joni and, ultimately, to Daystar's leadership, under her control. Jimmy Evans, a guest in the room, was there to mediate, but his involvement soon turned from helpful guidance to a disturbing show of spiritual manipulation. According to Jonathan and Susie's accounts of the meeting, Evans began by aligning himself with Joni in a way that made it clear he was there to help her maintain control over the family and Daystar. "You need to submit," Evans told Jonathan firmly. "Joni's voice is the voice of God in this house, and when she speaks, you listen." The statement was as jarring as it was startling. Jonathan, visibly shocked, asked for clarification, trying to grasp the gravity of what was being said. "You're saying that when Joni speaks, it's as though God is speaking through her?" he asked. Evans responded without hesitation, saying, "Yes. When Joni speaks, she speaks with God's authority. You need to understand that this is not just about family or leadership, it's about divine authority. If you refuse to listen to her, you're refusing to listen to God's will." The words were delivered with such certainty that it was hard to imagine them coming from someone who was supposed to be offering counsel. In the moment, Jonathan could barely process what he was hearing. How could Evans, a man who had built a career on counseling couples to communicate and compromise, be equating a person's voice with that of God's? The meeting escalated quickly from there. Evans's tone grew more insistent, and the pressure on Jonathan and Susie to accept Joni's authority became palpable. Evans went on to say that Jonathan's stubbornness was causing unnecessary division, and that the only way to move forward as a family and as a ministry was for Jonathan to accept Joni's leadership without question. "You are being stubborn, and stubbornness is the same as idolatry," Evans declared, further compounding the shock of the moment. "You're making an idol of your own opinion instead of submitting to God's will as it's delivered through Joni. This is a spiritual matter, Jonathan, not just a family matter." Jonathan, deeply disturbed by the implications of what was being said, tried to stand his ground. "I can hear from God myself," he insisted. "Why do I need to hear from her to know what God is saying?" Evans's response was chilling. "You can hear from God. But you need to understand that what Joni says is God's will in this family, in this ministry. If you can't accept that, you have no place here." The veiled threat was unmistakable. The stakes had been raised. Submit to Joni or lose everything. At this point, Joni, who had been quiet until then, jumped in. "God's will is clear," she said, her voice firm. "And you need to understand that this is about more than just you, Jonathan. It's about what's best for this family and Daystar. You've made this about your own opinions, and that's where you're wrong. The only thing that matters is that you submit to my leadership." Jonathan felt the weight of the situation pressing on him. The woman he had once admired and looked to for guidance had now become the very person demanding his submission to an authority that felt foreign and manipulative. Evans, sensing the tension, pressed further, telling Jonathan that he needed to humble himself. "If God came to you right now and said you were wrong, would you correct it?" Evans asked. Jonathan hesitated, trying to grasp the full implication of the question. "Of course," he answered, but Evans didn't stop there. "Well, God hasn't appeared in front of you with a booming voice, Jonathan," Evans said, "but he has spoken through Joni, and you need to recognize that." Jonathan was stunned. The idea that a person could claim to speak directly for God was something he had never encountered in such a blatant manner. At this point, the meeting was no longer about resolving family issues or addressing Daystar's future. It had turned into a power struggle, with Evans and Joni asserting a level of authority that Jonathan could not accept. Evans continued to press Jonathan, saying that if he refused to submit to Joni's leadership, he would bring division to the family and incur God's wrath. "You're leading your family down a dangerous path," Evans warned. "You're opening yourself to spiritual and emotional destruction if you don't align yourself with Joni's authority. This is God's will, Jonathan." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud, and Jonathan knew that he was at a crossroads. His family, his ministry, and his own sense of identity were all on the line. In that moment, the dynamic had shifted irrevocably. It wasn't just about family disagreements anymore. It had become a battle for control, a spiritual war in which Joni, with Evans's backing, was positioning herself as the sole authority. Jonathan and Susie left the meeting shaken, their trust in both Joni and Evans shattered. The language used by Evans, the pressure to submit, and the comparisons to idolatry left them feeling as though they had been manipulated, their very faith used against them to control their actions. The Lamb family, once united in purpose and faith, was now divided by this shocking encounter. The fallout from the meeting would be felt for months to come. The public, unaware of the details, would soon begin to hear bits and pieces of the story, and the rumors surrounding Joni Lamb, Jimmy Evans, and the Lamb family's internal struggles began to grow. For Jonathan, the path forward was unclear. He had lost his place within the family, and his relationship with his mother had been irreparably damaged. Evans's words and Joni's role in the manipulation left him questioning everything he had once believed about leadership, family, and faith. As the rumors continued to swirl, the Lamb family found themselves in a public battle with the foundation of their ministry and their relationships at risk. The shocking allegations from Jimmy Evans would not soon be forgotten, and the questions about Joni's leadership and authority would continue to haunt the Lamb family for years to come.
At your mother's request, we called you back in here so God could talk to you. And we give you 24 hours from the time we sign this. That's roughly 2:30 to 3 o'clock tomorrow. If you can sign that, come back in to Arnold's office.
Family reaction, Joni Lamb's response, and what's next. The fallout from the intense meeting between Joni Lamb, Jonathan Lamb, Susie Lamb, and Jimmy Evans left the entire Lamb family shaken, but it also marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. The accusations of spiritual manipulation and control had not only caused a major rift within the family, but had also cast a shadow over the future of Daystar Television Network. For the Lambs, the public and private consequences of that meeting were overwhelming. Joni Lamb, once seen as the strong, graceful, and supportive matriarch of the family, was now under intense scrutiny from her own children, as well as from the public. For years, she had been admired for her leadership of Daystar and her unwavering faith, but now her actions were being questioned by the very people closest to her. As news of the meeting began to spread, so did the rumors about her behavior. Joni had always maintained a picture-perfect image, both as a wife and as a mother. But now, in the wake of her actions, people began to wonder if her public persona had been a carefully constructed facade. For Jonathan Lamb, the situation was deeply personal. He had spent his life working alongside his family, building the ministry that they all had poured their hearts into. The words spoken by Evans and Joni during that meeting had shattered everything Jonathan believed about leadership, faith, and family. He had been pushed to submit to his mother's authority in a way that felt unnatural, and in doing so, he found himself questioning everything he had once believed in. His relationship with his mother, which had always been a source of strength, was now marred by feelings of betrayal and anger. The spiritual manipulation he had experienced left him feeling isolated and helpless, trapped in a family dynamic that was no longer healthy. Joni, on the other hand, was faced with a crisis that she never saw coming. For years, she had been the pillar of strength in her family, and her role as the public face of Daystar had earned her the admiration of millions. Now, with Jonathan's resistance to her leadership, she found herself fighting to hold on to control, both over her family and the network. When the meeting with Jonathan and Susie ended in confrontation, Joni retreated into herself, unsure of how to handle the emotional fallout. She had always seen herself as the leader of the family, the one who held everything together, but now she was being questioned by the very people she had worked so hard to protect. Joni's response to the situation was one of defiance and denial. She refused to accept any criticism of her leadership, dismissing Jonathan's concerns as rebellious and misguided. In the aftermath of the meeting, Joni continued to publicly defend her actions, insisting that her authority was divinely ordained. She saw herself as a woman of faith, chosen to lead not only her family but the ministry that had become a cornerstone of Christian television. In interviews and public statements, Joni downplayed the severity of the family conflict, framing it as a simple misunderstanding or a moment of temporary discord. She made no public acknowledgement of the emotional harm that Jonathan and Susie had experienced during the meeting, and she appeared unwilling to consider that her actions might have caused irreparable damage. Meanwhile, Jonathan and Susie were left to pick up the pieces of their shattered family dynamic. The emotional toll of the meeting weighed heavily on them, and the public scrutiny only added to their stress. They felt betrayed by Joni's refusal to acknowledge the pain they had endured. For Jonathan, this was not just about a family disagreement. It was about a fundamental shift in the way he saw his own role in the family and in the ministry. He had always assumed that he would take over Daystar one day, following in Marcus's footsteps, but now he was unsure if he even wanted to be part of the network anymore. Susie, too, struggled with the fallout. She had always been supportive of Jonathan and his family, but now, after the emotional and spiritual manipulation they had endured, she found herself questioning her own place in the ministry. Her faith had been shaken, not by external forces, but by the very people who had claimed to be her spiritual leaders. For Susie, the damage was personal, and she could not easily move past the feeling that her trust had been violated by those she had considered family. The public reaction to the family's turmoil was swift and overwhelming. Daystar, once a beacon of Christian television, was now caught in a storm of controversy. The network's credibility was being questioned, and the image of Joni Lamb as a faithful leader was starting to crack. Fans and followers who had long admired Joni for her role in Daystar's success now found themselves divided. Some believed that Joni was simply doing what was necessary to protect Daystar's future, while others saw her actions as manipulative and controlling. For Joni, the public backlash was difficult to ignore. Her carefully curated image of a loving, devoted wife and mother was being called into question. She had spent years building a reputation as a strong Christian leader, but now, that image was being shattered by the very people she had trusted most. Despite the mounting criticism, Joni refused to back down. She remained steadfast in her belief that she had done nothing wrong and that her authority was necessary to keep the family and the ministry together. As the tension within the family continued to rise, it became clear that the future of Daystar was uncertain. With Jonathan and Susie distancing themselves from the network and the Lamb family divided, questions loomed about who would take the reins of the ministry going forward. Would Joni continue to lead, or would the family's internal struggles lead to a reorganization of Daystar's leadership? In the days and weeks following the meeting, the Lamb family was forced to confront the harsh reality of their situation. Jonathan and Susie struggled to find a way to rebuild their relationship with Joni, but the damage seemed too deep. The emotional scars left by the spiritual manipulation and the family betrayal were not something that could be healed overnight. And for Joni, the weight of leading Daystar, while also trying to reconcile her fractured family, became a burden she could no longer ignore. What happens next for Joni Lamb and the Lamb family remains uncertain. Will Joni be able to repair her relationship with her children and the rest of her family? Or will the rift continue to widen, further separating the once united family? And how will Daystar move forward in the wake of these revelations? Only time will tell how this family drama will unfold. But one thing is clear: the Lamb family's public image, once untarnished, is now forever changed. And the fallout from these events will likely have lasting effects on the future of their ministry and their personal lives.